2022 was certainly an eventful year, and while all events and trends deserve their spotlight, I want to talk to you about movies in this video. Perhaps out of escapism, perhaps because it is one of the few things I feel qualified speaking about, I want to focus solely on the art of moving pictures. And thus, I have picked 22 movies I saw in the 22nd year of this millennium to share with you. Some of them are easily the best works I have ever seen in recent years. Some of them are stupidly funny. Some of them are just ugly. So, if you would join me as we remember this year through movies, you might find some interesting ones which you missed out on. Starting off with Everything Everywhere All at Once, which was easily the best movie of this year for me. It is a very weird genre-bending psychedelic journey of a movie. And it really had everything. Great characters, amazing visuals, good music, and a very well written and thought-provoking story. Now, I know some people didn't like the movie because everything really comes to you all at once and can leave you a bit overwhelmed. Plus, it should have an obligatory epilepsy warning at times. But this movie is a must-watch. It is very intriguing and really polished. It's very well made. I really hope it wins the Best Picture award in the Oscars this year, but that is still to see. A close second for me for this year was one of the best Netflix movies in recent years, All Quiet on the Western Front. An amazing, albeit very hard to watch war movie. And while I have praised a fair share of anti-war movies, this one is really unique. For starters, it focuses on the Germans in World War I. It focuses on the ones who lost. Thus, it has the advantage to present war as utterly meaningless, as Germany got nothing out of their involvement. It has a lot of the same elements and features I praised Saving Ryan and Full Metal Jacket for, and even more. Storytellers made a great video on the movie, and I will link it in the description. My only criticism is that they could have focused 10 or so minutes on the boys before they joined the military. This could have served to show two things. First, the viewer can form a better connection to the boys and learn their little idiosyncrasies. Second, more emphasis could have been put on the importance of propaganda in recruiting people. The old false promise of glory and honor. But this is a minor criticism. The movie is amazing. A personal favorite moment of mine was when the soldiers took over the enemy's trenches, and the first thing they did was start eating the French's food in the middle of the fight as they were so starved. The movie is incredible, but as I said, very hard to watch. Still, if you have Netflix, and even if you don't, you should watch this. Another movie which received a ton of praise this year was The Northman. Robert Eggers is an amazing director, and if he had a few more movies under his belt of the same quality as his current ones, I would have said he is one of the best contemporary directors. But for now, I will hold on to that claim. His 2020 The Northman is a Hamletian story of a son seeking revenge against the usurper who killed his father. The movie is amazing, like really, but it just didn't quite reach the same heights as The Witch or The Lighthouse. Don't get me wrong, it was an amazing movie, and one of the best ones of this year. It is just that I think his previous two movies were a lot more imaginative and intriguing. Definitely do watch The Northman though. It can have a bit of a slow start, but it quickly enchants you and it really draws you into the story and the world, and you are on the edge of your seat waiting to see what would become of the protagonist. A drastic shift in genres and style, the most unique and surprising watch for me of this year was RRR, a title that makes you sound like a dog barking when you read it. Now, admittedly it was my first experience with a Tollywood movie. I had heard of all the tropes before. The absurd stunts, the overly dramatic editing, the sudden transitions to a musical were all things I had to get used to. But this is not a criticism, I really enjoyed the movie. The absurd stunts made the movie all the more interesting. I really wish we could see more of these less than real action movies in the West. Here we have it reserved only for superhero movies, but many Asian movies use this style. And the musical piece was used to show the dynamic between the characters. I could have lived though without some of the dramatic zooms and pan shots. Also, at one point the movie almost lost me as it showed a montage of the two main protagonists becoming friends. Something that should have been focused more on. This is my main criticism towards RRR. There is very poor connection between the first and second third of it. But still, as far as action movies go, I highly recommend it. It doesn't have a very deep story and the image feels sometimes a bit overly edited, but it is a very unique watch. And if you have never seen a Bollywood or Tollywood movie, definitely start with this. Going a bit further east, we have the Korean romance mystery Decision to Leave. A bit of an unorthodox mixture, romance and mystery, I know. But the movie is drop dead gorgeous. Easily one of my top 5 favorite movies for this year. There are so many amazing shots, very creative edits and little details in every frame. The movie focuses on the relationship between an insomniac detective and the wife of a recently deceased person. Initially, he interacts with the widow since she is the suspect of the investigation, but this quickly evolves into a more romantic engagement. I won't spoil anything more for you because the movie is definitely something you should check out. One small complaint I have, and this could be because of the poor subtitles the movie had, is that the dialogue often feels weird and confusing. I can understand the grammatical errors arising due to the female character being Chinese and hence not speaking Korean well enough, but there were often completely nonsensical statements. This also led to the drama between some of the characters becoming absolutely incomprehensible to me, but I will give the movie the benefit of the doubt and write this off as error in translation. Check Decision to Leave, it is a masterpiece by Park Chan-wook. Going even further east, we have Jujutsu Kaisen 0 from Japan. As I was comprising this list and doing research on trivia for each movie, I was pleasantly surprised to find that the Jujutsu Kaisen movie was received really well by both critics and audience alike. And I think the scores are well merited. If you don't know of Studio Mappa, boy are you in for a ride. Everything they touch becomes gold. They're the studio behind Jujutsu Kaisen, Attack on Titan, Demon Slayer and now Chainsaw Man. The stories they adapt are already interesting and they clearly put a lot of passionate work to make proper adaptations. And the animation, it is incredible. No CGI, no strings. Everything is incredibly detailed and fluid. You can watch their movies just for the animation alone. As for Jujutsu Kaisen 0, it was pretty damn good. Granted, you have to be used to some of the anime tropes and unspoken rules. It is a pretty straightforward hero story, but the plot is, I would say, engaging enough. Also, you can watch the movie even if you haven't watched the anime series, as the movie is more of a prequel for them. So if you can stomach animes, check it out. It is not a masterpiece like Perfect Blue, but still one of the better movies of this year. To round off all the titles which I think deserve the most recognition, my third favorite movie of this year was definitely The Batman. I have already filleted the long shaft of this movie enough, in 2 separate videos in fact. But I do claim it is a really good movie and this is a hill I'm willing to die on. Maybe not a cinematic masterpiece, but definitely up there with many other great movies. Do watch The Batman, it was a breath of fresh air from superhero movies. Well, now that I spoke about The Batman, I need to also mention Marvel. I will breeze through them as they were all quite bad. I already made a video about Doctor Strange, so I will keep it short here. All I want to add is that this was the only Marvel movie I was sort of interested in this year. Doctor Strange remains the only character with any potential in the MCU, apart from Spider-Man, but they just butchered him too. Don't watch this movie. As for Thor Love and Thunder, well, Taika Waititi is a great director, and his previous Thor movie was actually not that bad. So I thought I would go watch this one in hopes that it will deliver everything the previous one did and maybe more. But instead, all I got was a pile of shit. I remember I physically winced in the cinema and had to go take a quick walk to recover because one of the jokes was so bad, and the special effects at time were atrocious. But I don't remember much more from this movie, so yeah, it was really that bad. Next up is Morbius, which we all know was a very bad movie. But it does have the charm of being so bad that it's kinda funny to watch. And yeah, we all remember the memes that Morbius is the film of all time. And that about does it for Marvel. I didn't watch the new Black Panther as there is only so much garbage that I can endure. Before we go into the next selection of movies, I wanted to mention a movie that I saw just yesterday. Fair warning, my thoughts on it are still rather raw, so this is more of some immediate impressions. Take it with a grain of salt. Glass Onion is the unexpected sequel to Rian Johnson's Knives Out. It follows Detective Blanc on another whodunit mystery. But while the previous one was more of a subversion with some mixing of genres, this one subverts expectations by having a very straightforward and dumb plot. There were some twists and turns here and there which caught me by surprise, but that about does it for the positives. My immediate impression is that it was decently good, but not as good as the first one. I think both movies had a great deal of comedy mixed in with the mystery, but I just couldn't take it seriously after seeing Among Us in the first 10 minutes. This next section of movies comprises those that I thought were pretty good, but either didn't stand out with anything unique or had some glaring flaws in them. Also, coincidentally, they were all thrillers or horror movies, so viewer discretion is advised. I won't put any of the more gory visuals, but still, beware. Prior to seeing Don't Worry Darling, I had already skimmed the less than positive reviews, so I went in not expecting much. But as I was watching, I couldn't fathom why people had disliked it so much. It was actually pretty interesting and captivating, until the end. The last 20 minutes of the movie were so out of place. A psychological thriller should not end with a car chase. And the message of the movie was something like women strong together or something, I don't know. Everything until the last part of the movie was incredible, but when it came to delivering and actually revealing what is inside the box, the movie flopped. I think at some point I caught on to the fact that they're living in a simulation, and I joked to my friend with whom I was watching it that, oh, if they die in the game, they die in the real world too, SAL style. She responded with laughter and said, no, they wouldn't do that. And that is exactly what they did, without any explanation as to why. And as a final criticism, I want to say that Harry Styles just can't act. Maybe it is just because his co-star Florence absolutely outshines him in every scene. She carried this movie on her shoulders. I am very torn about this movie. On one hand, it was very interesting in the beginning, but on the other hand, it had a terrible ending and Harry Styles. Next up are two movies that I think should be mentioned in the same breath. Thorugh and X were made in the same year by Ty West and Maya Goth. And I saw there is a third one in the making, so I guess it will be some sort of a trilogy. Thorugh is the prequel to X and tells the story of the antagonist of the latter. It takes place towards the end of the First World War and focuses on, well, Thorugh. It shows her strive to become a star, which also becomes her rebellion against her mother and constraining norms. X, on the other hand, is a more typical slasher. Group of young people go in a cabin, shoot an adult movie and get killed in brutal ways. But between the two, Thorugh is more unique and has a more interesting story. Also, visually, Thorugh is definitely better. Also, all of Thorough's kills were meaningful to the protagonist and thus had more impact. In X, they were just random murders. I am not sure how to explain this point, but I hope you understood it. Neither one of the movies made me feel particularly scared or tense though. Take my review with a grain of salt, however, as I have yet to see a scary movie that genuinely evokes anything in me. And that is why to me slasher movies are just a spectacle of blood, nothing particularly notable. Still, Thorugh had some nice visuals and a somewhat engaging story. It was the better of the two. X was too average. I would have preferred if Ty West and Maya Goth had made one movie, combining the ideas from the two and polishing it even more. To round off all the horror/scary movies, we have Nope. I will be honest, I never was a fan of Jordan Peele's work. Get Out's plot felt extremely predictable and the subtext felt washed away. Also, some of the interpretations through a race theory lens are a tad lost on me as I am European. But Nope was different. It had a much more interesting story. I was rooting for the characters and some of the moments did make me feel tense. Now, this wasn't a scary movie by any measure. It just had some gory scenes, one of which did look really nice, but I guess that is the golden shot for the film. As another criticism, the movie does hammer in the message a bit too much to the point that I felt annoyed by the lack of subtlety. But it was a decent movie, a solid 6.5 out of 10. Lastly, we have all the other movies that were either okay and kinda funny or really bad. These are movies I am including merely if you were curious about them. I don't particularly recommend them, but 2 or 3 of them were actually decently funny. I wanted to put this next movie here as a very entertaining watch, not by the movie's merit, but by the experience of it. All around the world, people were dressing up in suits to go watch Minions: The Rise of Gru. I remember when I went to the theater, it was packed and this was already a few weeks after the premiere. The movie wasn't that interesting though. And if I were to be honest, if I had a kid, I probably wouldn't show this movie to it out of respect for its intellect. They just don't make them like they used to, do they? But I remember that every little thing that happened in the movie was met by ovations in the audience. I don't think I have ever laughed that hard in a theater in my life. However, you can't get this experience anymore. It was like installation art. It was a brief experience of worldwide hysteria. And for that, the experience of the movie was a must-see. The movie itself though, trash. Next we have Elvis. I think the success of Bohemian Rhapsody the movie gave rise to these biopics about musicians. In 2019 we had Rocketman about Elton John. And now the latest of these to make a complete mockery out of a person's life is Elvis. Directed by the same person that made Moulin Rouge and Romeo plus Juliet, you can expect some of the same techniques from the latter. At random points in the movie you get these really intensely edited sequences that should be prefaced with an epilepsy warning. But is the movie good? Not really. It is incredibly forgettable. I don't remember much from it other than feeling really overwhelmed and not in a good way. After seeing the movie, my brother reviewed it as it felt like 2 different Elvis movies spliced together. And I do agree with that. At the midpoint of the plot, the movie seems to drastically change its style and focus, which is fine. Elvis's life did experience a change, but the connection between the two was quite poor. And the excessive narration really broke the flow of the movie. Overall, I would not recommend this movie. When a genre becomes too prolific, naturally works that aim to subvert the tropes in mainstream start emerging. Thus, the response to the rise of biopics for famous musicians is the new Weird Al movie. Based loosely on the Weird Al Yankovic's life, the movie is more of a parody than an actual biography. And as far as parodies go, it was not that bad in the first part. Some of the jokes landed, there were some meta humor, but it was bearable. However, the movie really lost me with the Pablo Escobar plot. That felt really random and out of place. I did expect more, especially when a legend like Weird Al was involved in the making of the movie, but oh well. The movie as a whole was quite mid, and yet it was still somehow more enjoyable than the Elvis movie. Another parody, this time of the whodunit mystery genre. See How They Run. It had a few jokes that actually got me to snicker, and I will be honest, Sam Rockwell is one of my favorite actors. He has a certain goofy and silly aura that always translates to the characters he plays. But though I would have liked to recommend this movie to you, it does what is in my opinion a cardinal sin: meta humor.
Whatever next? A caption that says 3 weeks later.
Meta observations are not jokes, they're just observations. Breaking the fourth wall is not inherently funny. My hatred for meta jokes is why I could never truly get behind Rick and Morty. On top of that, it is bad subversion of the genre. The mystery is quite poorly structured and it doesn't work with the genre deconstruction which the movie aims for. Still though, it was a rather fun watch. Watch it at your own discretion. I know Blunt was very controversial because it did not even attempt to accurately retell the story of Marilyn Monroe. But let's forget about that for a second. How does the movie stand on its own? Is it actually a good movie? Well, if anything, I can appreciate it going for a more artistic approach. There were some interesting shots and I liked the switch to black and white whenever they were recreating a photograph of Monroe. And Ana de Armas does a spectacular job in her portrayal. The movie goes for the fragmented story approach where I think they were going for something like The Mirror, a collection of memories flowing on the screen. But it just doesn't have the same depth as Tarkovsky's work. The story was quite shallow and didn't fully explore the character given to it. It had its moments, it had some really good moments, but they're like little gems in the mud. So for this I will rate the movie slightly better than mediocre. I went to watch Amsterdam because it was by the same people that made American Hustle. American Hustle was a very nice movie and I do recommend it. It's not a masterpiece, but it was a pretty good and funny movie. Amsterdam on the other hand, really bad. The only redeemable quality was Christian Bale's performance. I had a really hard time caring about anything else in the story but his character. And it is some unnecessarily overcomplicated plot with a very dumb resolution. I don't recommend it. Fall was a movie heavily hyped on TikTok, and I made the mistake of watching it because of that. If you get past the first 4 minutes where the movie managed to completely misrepresent and butcher traditional climbing, does it get better? No. I thought the premise of the movie was somewhat fresh and original and allowing for in-depth character exploration. 2 characters stuck on a small platform 300 meters above the ground. I thought it would be of the same niche genre as 127 Hours, where we see a character struggle to survive against all odds. And to that end, the movie did deliver. But the problem is that this comprises about 30 minutes of the runtime. The rest is unnecessary drama portrayed by some of the worst acting imaginable. The camera work at times was so terrible I was completely lost at what I'm supposed to be seeing. The movie was quite poor altogether. It had a really nice premise that was padded out with the most unengaging drama between the characters. And the ending was fucking stupid. To finish this list we have another comedy, Bullet Train. It was decently funny, I would say. It had its haha funny moments. But it was nothing spectacular, it is just simple entertainment. Still, there is worse in movies like that, what I would call a snack movie. So if you need some light watch while on the road or after a more exhausting day, this movie is for you. So those are my 22 movies from 2022. I wanted to see The Fableman and Babylon, but here they only came out recently and I wouldn't have had the time to make this video. Triangle of Sadness was also highly recommended to me, but I had promised my mother to watch it with her over the festival season, so that is why you don't see it in this list. If you had any movies of this year that you didn't see on the list, leave them in the comments. I love watching films and I'm always looking for more recommendations. I am still going through the many comments you left on the previous video. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing. I make video essays about movies and sometimes about other things, so do stay tuned, and I will see you next time.